Many people think that making partner is just a matter of time. You do good work for long enough and at some point you'll be rewarded. But unfortunately, that's a total lie. So I've been a partner at an AmLaw 100 firm for 5 years now, and here's the truth. There are 3 numbers that almost every law firm uses to determine who makes partner and who doesn't. And most associates don't even know that these metrics exist. So stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what those 3 numbers are and how to reverse engineer your career so that you hit them faster than I did. So my story as an attorney is that I started out as a solo practitioner, merged my practice with a friend of mine, and we had our own firm for a while. And then I ultimately then went to some boutique firms and then moved on to AmLaw 100 firms, some of the largest firms in the country, and where I'm ultimately now, where I made partner at an AmLaw 100 firm, and I've been a partner for about 5 years now. So I made it, but it was slower than it could have been had I known a few key things in advance as far as what I should be targeting. So if you're an associate or a law student or even senior counsel who is wondering why you're stuck, stick around, because this video is going to show you exactly what law firms and partnership committees look at behind closed doors to determine who makes partner and who doesn't. So let's start off and dispel some myths about what it takes to make partner at a law firm. And one is that it doesn't have to do with seniority. So it's not just a thing where you move up the ranks, you're an associate, and then maybe you become counselor, whatever the job title is, and then at some point, after a certain amount of time, you automatically become partner. That's just not really how it works. It also really has nothing to do with doing good work, although that's a foundation, as I'll talk about later. But doing good work is just not enough to make partner. It's not doing good work and being around for long enough and then just waiting until you magically make partner. So what it is about is ultimately having a practice that acts like a micro business within the firm. But building a partner-worthy practice is not something that just happens overnight. And it's something that you have to grow into over time. And there are some foundational things that you need to have before you can really even try to start building a practice that is going to be partnership worthy. The main fundamental you need to have before you even start building a partner-worthy practice is doing good work. None of the stuff I'm going to talk about later on is going to make any sort of difference if you don't have a baseline of being able to do amazing work. And so, especially early on, take the time, spend the time to really learn your craft, to really be able to do top quality work product, because that is the foundation is going to get you to making a partnership practice. The next stage is being trusted with clients. And so this is a question of several things. So one is, are you dependable? Can you be relied on to reply to emails in a timely fashion and do good work and be on time with things? You have to have this baseline of being dependable. And also, do you take ownership of things? So when you get a task assigned to you, are you going to make sure that it gets done and that you take ownership of your docket and don't just say, well, somebody else will take care of this, or, whatever, the partner is on this, or staff will handle that. Do you take personal ownership of things to make sure that things get done no matter what? Because partners want to be able to trust you that you're going to get stuff done and that you're going to do great work for clients and that they're not going to have to micromanage you, so that eventually you can do that on your own and not have to be supervised. And this also means you have to have good communication skills, that being, say, in-person communication skills over email. You have to understand what clients are thinking, the way that they want communication, the way that they want work product. And it takes some time to learn these things. And you need to show the people in the firm, whether it be partners or other folks, that you're not going to risk losing clients if you're directly interacting with them, that you're not going to embarrass yourself. You're not going to embarrass the firm. You're not going to embarrass other partners. And this is a really, really important trust that you need to work on gaining from partners and the firm, because otherwise you're never going to be able to move up and get clients of your own and get more exposure clients if you don't build that trust that you know what you're doing when you're talking to clients and aren't going to screw it up and lose clients and alienate them. And once you've shown that you can do good work and you can be trusted with clients, the next stage is showing that your practice is running like a business. So what does this mean? You have to understand the firm's business model. How do firms really make money? And the basics of this is, do you have a practice that generates sufficient income above overhead? And what this means is, do you have enough work to keep yourself busy, to keep other people busy, to generate revenue based off of this time? And for instance, are you able to keep things within budget? budget. So yeah, you may be able to bill a ton of hours on something, but are you actually collecting on that, right? Are you staying within budget? Are you being good with your hours? Are you being able to supervise people so that they're being efficient with their hours? And then does it generate enough income? So for example, you're doing all this work. Yeah, if your time gets written off, hey, that's not going to be great. Or if you work with clients who don't pay, that's not going to be great. It's money in the door when it really comes down to these things. And what this requires is being able to be efficient with your own time and to be able to manage other people to be efficient with their time so that you're able to bring in revenue on budget. And this leads directly into the three main metrics that are going to decide whether you're going to be able to make partner or whether you're not. So the three metrics that are critical to being able to make partner are earned fee credit, or EFC, matter origination credit, sometimes called MOC, and responsible attorney credit, sometimes called RAC. And these are the main three metrics that pretty much every law firm is going to use to determine whether you have a practice that has sufficient revenue and has sufficient growth potential to be able to make partner, or whether you're just going to plateau and never make partner. So let's start running through these, starting with earned fee credit. So EFC, or earned fee credit, is a measurement of how much money is actually collected from work that you do personally. And so it's important to understand that this is not just the hours that you bill. So for instance, you could bill a ton of time to a matter, but then if the client doesn't pay, you don't get any earned fee credit on that. And that time is effectively worthless. Similarly, if you bill a ton of time on something and go way over budget and your time has to be written down and the client won't pay for all the hours that you actually billed, that's also going to reduce your earned fee credit. And so those hours then are effectively worthless. So having good EFC metrics means that you have to be efficient with your time. You have to be able to come within budget. You have to make it so that people you're working with come in budget, and you should be working with clients that actually pay, or working on matters where your time isn't going to be inherently written down. So clients, for instance, that are really demanding and they have small budgets and naturally a lot of time gets written down. Working with those clients is going to be more detrimental to your EFC than it is working with clients where you're be able to be billed out at your full rate, and that's actually going to be collected from them. Now, early on, you're probably not going to have a lot of control over this. The reality is, if you're an associate working with partners, it's the partners who are going to write off your time. And especially in the beginning, there's sometimes an assumption that, well, associates aren't going to be very efficient. We're going to have to write off a lot of their time, and that it takes time to really get up to speed on things. And you don't really know a lot of times whether the billed work is actually going to be collected from clients or how long that's going to take. You're not going to be in control of those things because you're not the relationship partner. So early on, don't worry as much about this. But as you grow your own practice, or you have a lot of options of who to work with and who to not work with, keep this in mind, because working with clients who are actually going to pay and working on clients where you're actually going to be able to bill out all of your time and not have it written down, that's going to be critical to have these high EFC numbers that you're going to need to be able to make partner. So the next critical metric is matter origination credit, or MOC. And this is a measure of who actually brought the work into the firm. And again, it's based on money in the door. So you may be able to bring in these clients, but if they don't pay their bills, you're not getting any origination credit. Or you bring it in and you do a bunch of work on it, you have other people do a bunch of work, but if it has to be written down because the client won't pay for the full amount, then you're going to be getting less matter origination credit. So again, it has to do with money in the door. So let me give you some good examples here. So for instance, if you bring in a client, you do all the work on it, you're going to be getting 100% matter origination credit. So the best way to get good matter origination is to bring in clients where you can do the work yourself. Another way is to bring in work and work with other people and supervise them. Maybe they're partner level and they're doing work for a client that you can't do. So for me, I'm a patent attorney, and so I can't do things like employment law or licensing, or I don't like to do things like trademarks or copyright. So what I'll do is I will bring in a client and then I will refer that work out to other attorneys. And then what we will do is we will share the matter origination credit on those specific matters. So for instance, I bring in a trademark matter and I send it off to our trademark experts. I would share 50-50 matter origination credit, because I wouldn't be able to bring in that work had I not had this expert in trademark law to be able to help me out. That being said, all of the patent work I do for my clients, I get 100% matter origination credit. And this is something that isn't going to be quite as relevant early on in somebody's career, because typically you're working for a firm, the firm has a lot of existing clients, you're doing work for partners' clients, you're not really doing work for your own clients, maybe you bring in a little work here and there, and yeah, you could get matter origination credit for that, but a lot of times you cut your teeth and you learn by doing work for the firm and partner clients that are already out there. And then as you become more senior, you may not get much matter origination credit unless you're actually bringing in your own clients, or you have a specialty where other people are going to rely on you. Nobody else can handle it, and they rely on you to bring in and manage that work. Maybe the client was originally brought in by somebody else, but the new work, they're relying on you to bring that in. Then you might get matter origination credit. But really, the best way to get matter origination credit is by bringing in your own clients. And the third critical metric is responsible attorney credit, or RAC. And this is a measure of who is actually responsible for managing the work and managing the quality of the work, and who is ultimately responsible for that. So an example here is, so for instance, if you bring in a client and you do all the work, you're not supervised by a partner or anybody else, you're senior enough where you can manage the work directly, you would probably get 100% responsible attorney credit. Or if you bring in a client or matters yourself, and then you are supervising somebody else, whether that's another attorney or that's billable staff, and you're ultimately the one who is responsible for the quality of the work product and managing those matters, you may then get 100% responsible attorney credit on those sort of things. And another example is where you're supervising work of somebody else's client, but they're not able to manage that work themselves. So an example with me is, so since I'm a patent attorney, somebody has a client and that client needs patent work done, but they're maybe a corporate attorney or something like that. They know nothing about patents. They're not able to actually manage the quality of the work product because they don't have that expertise. And so me doing matters that are patent matters for clients like that, I would probably get 100% responsible attorney credit, assuming that I'm fully managing that on my own. And again, this is something that's probably not going to come up early on in your career because it takes some time to be able to learn what you're doing so that you can actually do things independently. A lot of times you need to be supervised and you're learning stuff constantly, so you wouldn't be truly responsible for things. It's only kind of when you get more senior where you can work independently and not have to be directly supervised by a partner. That's when you're going to be able to start earning responsible attorney credit. It's surprising, but most firms are not going to tell you that having these three metrics at the right level are going to get you 90 to 95% where you need to be able to make partner. And that it's these three metrics that really decide whether you're going to make partner, whether your practice is going to plateau, and you're really not going to make it. And realistically, if these numbers are where they need to be, it's almost impossible to not be able to make partner in a lot of ways. Unless for some reason you're sort of like an HR issue and you throw things, or you're really violent, or treat staff really badly, or somehow you're just not a personality fit, or you cause problems with the optics of, outside the firm, things like that. Or, if your work product really isn't that good and people have issues with potential liability or something like that, unless those are issues, unless there are fundamental baseline issues with you as a person or your practice, 90 to 95% is going to be these metrics that is really going to decide whether you are going to be able to make partner or not. Now, this naturally begs the question, where do these numbers need to be in order to be able to make partner? And obviously, it depends on the firm. Some firms are going to be very different than others, but I would say, especially for AmLaw 100 firms, you're probably going to need each of these numbers to be at least $1 million. Okay, so that's the reality of things, unfortunately, and it's probably going to become even more competitive, and those numbers are going to get higher over time. I definitely noticed that as I was working my way up to be partner, it was kind of a moving target, and it's because it just gets more competitive, right? There are other people who are candidates and who have these larger practices, and that's what it takes to make partner. But just as a baseline in your head for nice round numbers, assume it's going to be around $1 million for each of these metrics. And of course, it's not where these numbers need to be all equal. Sometimes with certain practices, people may have higher metrics than others and some may be lower, and it's all about the narrative. So for instance, let's say you originate a ton of work, you bring in a ton of clients, or you manage a lot of work. Maybe your earn fee credit, your credit for actually doing the work, maybe that's going to be on the low side. But that's totally fine if you have higher matter origination credit, or you're the responsible attorney, you have higher RAC, that can totally make up for it. Or another thing is, so for instance, if you have a super specialty and you bill a ton of time, your earn fee credit may be really high, but you may not have a lot of matter origination credit, or you might not have a lot of responsible attorney credit where you're managing other people. And that's totally fine. Every practice is really different. And that's why the analogy of having a little small business within the firm is a great way to think about it. You just need to have a narrative and need to have the numbers be right such that you can bring in enough revenue that is going to be over what overhead it is and to be able to cover your compensation and all those other sort of things. So to figure it out for your firm, the best way to do this is to look up the numbers for people who recently made partner. And I think you'll find that they're going to be around a certain level, and that'll give you a sense of where these three metrics need to be. And at some firms, these metrics are going to be readily available. You can actually look them up. Alternatively, if you can't look those numbers up, you may need to go to those people and ask them. But a lot of times people are willing to be open and candid about these things. They want to help other people make partner. It's something that's really positive. And so, a lot of times people will tell you what that is. So why are these three metrics so important to determining whether or not you're going to make partner? And it's not just something that's arbitrary, that is just randomly picked by firms. It totally makes sense. Because once you make partner, your compensation is based off of those metrics. Most firms are going to have some sort of compensation equation based on those metrics that determines how you're going to be compensated. So it's not like when you're an associate where you have guaranteed income and you have this salary, and no matter what, you're going to be essentially guaranteed that. It's a lot more eat what you kill when you become a partner. And so firms and partnership committees, they want to make sure that you're going to have a stable enough and strong enough and big enough practice where you're going to be able to actually make money with this new model. The last thing they want is to make somebody a partner and then they take a huge pay cut, because when they plug in those metrics into the compensation equation, suddenly then you're not making as much money. That doesn't make any sense for them to do. So they want to make sure that you're going to have a healthy practice, that you're going to be well compensated. And so in the long run, you're going to be happy being at the firm. Now, for me, I wish I had known this earlier. I wish I had known that it's just these three metrics that are going to be 90 to 95% of what really matters. There's a lot of narratives around, well, you need to develop these skills and you need to be better at this. But if you have sufficient revenue from clients, you have clients that you're bringing in, you do enough work, you meet your billable hours, and a lot of that time isn't written down. And if you're managing work for yourself and for other people, and you have those metrics at a certain level, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to be making partner. And that those narratives of, well, you need to develop these skills or these skills, it's kind of a false narrative in a lot of ways. If you had the numbers at the right level, they would say, hey, you're totally good. You've learned all these skills, right? So it's going to be a way to get ahead faster if you can focus on those metrics and getting those metrics as high as possible, as soon as possible. Because for me, I wish I had known that focus. I would have focused on that way sooner, and I probably would have made partner a lot sooner and not been upset along the way, because I felt like a lot of times when I was evaluated, it was like I was like being insulted. It was like people were saying, you're not doing a good job. You're not, at a partner level yet. And really that didn't have a lot to do with it. It just had to do with those numbers. And then it was sort of a narrative sort of around, hey, how do you build those numbers up? Which is kind of true, but in a lot of ways, it's kind of the tail wagging the dog. If you have the numbers, then people say, hey, you're totally great and you've learned all these skills. So why aren't firms more transparent about this? And I've wondered this myself for a long time, and I think it's a few things. One is that partners make money off of associates doing their work. That's how partners are compensated. Unlike associates who have a guaranteed income with a salary, partners have to meet these metrics, and the way they do that is they leverage their practice by having associates do their work. So there's kind of a conflict of interest in a lot of ways, because the partners, sure, they naturally do want people to move up. They want them to make partner, but at the same time, they want to have associates they can trust who are going to do good work for them, who help them generate income. So there's, a bit of a problem there, and that may be why firms don't tend to be really explicit about why these three metrics are so critical. But it's also well-intentioned. So a lot of times, especially early on in someone's career. They don't want associates focusing on business development and doing things that really, aren't going to help them with the fundamentals. Doing business development and client handling, things like that, that can be really fun to do, but it's something that is not really going to do you much good if you don't have the basic skills. And sometimes people just want to move up and do those things early on when they're really not ready for it, when they don't have the fundamentals. And so I think the firm doesn't want people to focus on the wrong thing too early. Another thing is I think firms don't want to discourage people from having a practice that doesn't necessarily become a partner level practice. And that's totally fine. There is a place for people who want to do good work and may not want to bring in their clients and may not want to manage work. People can have very successful careers at a firm, and they don't want to make it out like, hey, well, unless you're bringing in clients, unless you're managing work, you're not going to move up here and you're not going to do well. That's not the case. You may not have a practice where you're going to make partner and be able to have that partner name, but you're still going to be very successful and have an enjoyable career, right? And so they don't want to dissuade people and say, well, I shouldn't even try because if I'm not going to make partner, this doesn't really matter. But in the end, a lot of people may realize like, well, I don't want to have a partner level practice. That does not sound fun to me. That sounds terrible. I want to have my guaranteed salary. That's just so much easier. And the other reason is that it's really daunting. So telling you, hey, you need to have $1 million in matter origination credit, $1 million in responsible attorney credit, and $1 million in earned fee income, that's going to freak anybody out. That's like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to do that? And even for me, I remember the last time where I had $10,000 of matter origination credit. And I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. And if you had then told me, it's like, oh, that's awesome, but you're going to have to get it up to $1 million to be able to make partner, it would have been devastating in a lot of ways, right? So they don't want to freak people out and make the bar seem like it's so high that it's impossible. Because when it comes down to it, it's not impossible. A lot of people make partner, and it takes time. It's not something that happens overnight, but you can absolutely build a practice that is $1 million of all those metrics. So it's important to understand that this path to partnership, it is not the same for everybody. Everybody is going to have a different path. Some may be faster, some may be slower, and there's not really a right way. You just have to get to those numbers, but there certainly is a better way. So if you want to know the secret to how to maximize the odds of making partner at every stage in your career, whether that's as a junior associate or that's a senior counsel, or even while you're in law school or earlier, check out this video that breaks it all down and gives you an actionable plan regardless of where you are in your career journey.